Hi, I'm Lily. 3 weeks ago, I followed my parents on what they called a family picnic. They smiled. I followed. I didn't know they were about to end my brother's life for his $5.6 million inheritance. That's when I saw my father shove Jacob's wheelchair straight toward the cliff. They thought no one was watching, but Jacob didn't fall that day. I did. Into the truth. Before we dive in, tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And would your own family ever do something like this? I sat there for almost 10 minutes, staring at the same driveway I used to race my bike up as a kid. But today, it felt different, like pulling up to a courtroom, not home. My hands tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles pale. Part of me hoped if I sat still long enough, maybe none of this would be real. This was supposed to be my safe place. Our family's perfect house, with its polished white fences and flower beds, Mom still paid someone to keep neat. Northern California suburbs didn't change much. But the people inside? They did. I sighed and rubbed my palms down my jeans, trying to summon the nerve to get out of the car. The Shaws, that's who we used to be. Dad, Clyde Shaw, respected architect, the man who designed half of this town, as people like to say. Mom, Mirabelle Shaw, local charity darling, always in the newspaper for handing out checks or hosting fundraisers. And Jacob, my big brother, the golden boy of Lincoln Hills, captain of everything, prom king, straight-A student, the works. I used to think I was proud of all that. Now I wasn't sure. 2 years ago, Jacob went hiking. One fall changed everything. 1 minute he was posting pictures from some trail. The next, he was in a hospital bed with a broken spine. He never walked again. At first, Mom and Dad acted like saints. The whole town praised them for standing by him. But when the casseroles stopped showing up, when the attention faded, so did their patience, slowly, quietly. Now they looked at him like he wasn't a person, like he was dead weight no one dared admit aloud. But I saw it. I killed the engine. Silence hit harder than any sound. I told myself to get out. Move. Pretend it's just another Friday. But my stomach felt heavy, like I was walking into something I couldn't name. I finally stepped out, shutting the car door more softly than necessary. Leaves crunched under my shoes. Autumn in California still smelled like dry grass and asphalt. I crossed the yard, reaching for that same doorknob I'd turned 1,000 times before. The house felt colder than I remembered. I found Jacob in the dining room, what used to be the heart of the house. Now it was half dark, shades pulled down like they were hiding something. He sat there in his wheelchair, head dipped forward slightly, half asleep. His hair was longer, his arms thinner. His breathing was soft. "Jake," I whispered, kneeling beside him. And he stirred slightly. I kissed the side of his head. "I'm home." His eyelids fluttered. No words. But I saw the smallest twitch of his fingers. In the kitchen, Mom didn't even glance up from her tablet. I walked past her, stood right there waiting for acknowledgement. She scrolled through whatever charity email or social post she was reading, pretended I wasn't there. "Hi, Mom." Nothing. Just a small, deliberate sip of tea. I sat across from her anyway. 15 minutes passed in silence before Dad came home. His footsteps told me it was him before I saw him. Same slow, tired gait. He nodded at me briefly, said, "You're here," like it was a fact, not a greeting. Then, without looking at Jacob, he sat at the far end of the table. Mom stood, ladled soup into bowls. placed one in front of him, one in front of herself, and none in front of Jacob. I stood up and got my brother a bowl myself. Dinner was silent. Until Mom cleared her throat, setting down her spoon like she was making a business announcement. "We're taking Jacob out tomorrow. Family picnic." My spoon paused midway to my mouth. Dad didn't speak, just nodded once, his gaze fixed somewhere past my shoulder. I turned to Jacob. His lips parted slightly. Confusion flickered across his face. He hadn't been taken out in nearly a year. Not since Christmas. Not since the last time I tried to push for a family outing and Mom shut it down. Now she wanted a picnic. "In the park near Bishop's Creek," she added casually, dabbing her lips with a napkin. I forced myself to swallow. "Why?" Mom's eyes flicked up, meeting mine for the first time. Cold. Flat. "Because it's time." "Time for what?" She smiled. Sweet. Too sweet. The kind Grandpa used to warn me about. "When your mother smiles too sweet," he once told me, "check the locks." I felt that memory slice through me now. Dad stood up before I could say anything else. "Be ready by 8. Jacob didn't react, just stared blankly at the table. Later that night, when everyone else retreated to their separate silences, I sat in Jacob's old room, now just a storage space, staring at my phone. My heart wouldn't settle. That silver wheelchair. It sat gleaming by Jacob's door, catching the hall light. Mom insisted on that upgrade months after the inheritance, said it was necessary, but it felt clinical, like marking him as something other than family. I unlocked the hidden GPS app on my phone, one I'd installed in that wheelchair when no one was watching, just in case. The dot showed steady, home. But my gut twisted. I knew my mother. And when Mirabelle Shaw smiled too sweet, something was wrong. I told myself I was paranoid, but the next morning their car was gone before sunrise. I woke up to quiet, too quiet. For a long second, I thought I'd overslept. Sunlight poured through my bedroom curtains, the kind of sharp morning light that usually meant I'd missed something. Then the weight in my stomach returned, that pressure I couldn't explain. I sat up, instinctively reaching for my phone on the nightstand. The GPS app was still running. At first, I felt relief when I saw Jacob's location, but then I looked closer. The signal wasn't still. It was moving. My throat tightened as I zoomed in. The small blue dot was heading north, leaving town. It was already past Lincoln Hills, headed toward the edge of the national forest. They'd left. They'd left without me. I was out of bed and grabbing yesterday's clothes from the floor before my mind even caught up. I didn't stop to brush my hair or wash my face. I just pulled on Jacob's old sweatshirt from high school, the one I used to steal, and my keys, shoes, phone, that's all. The door slammed behind me as I ran to my car. The engine started, but I barely remembered turning the key. Tires crunched the driveway as I pulled out, pushing past the speed limits of our suburban streets. I kept glancing between the road and my phone, watching that blue dot inch further away from me. I didn't even know what I was chasing. I just knew I had to catch them. My parents. I was chasing my parents. The thought alone made me feel insane. What was I doing? Following my own mother like she was a criminal? I could hear my grandfather's voice in my head again, the words he used when I was a child. "When your mother smiles too sweet, check the locks." I should have checked sooner. I thought about calling the police. My hand hovered over my phone, thumb near the emergency dial. But then what? What would I say? That I didn't trust my mother? That my parents took my disabled brother somewhere and what? Felt wrong about it? Nobody would believe me. Maybe I wouldn't believe me if I weren't living this. The miles blurred past. The quiet roads near Sacramento stretched ahead, the trees thickening, the houses thinning out. I felt the isolation set in with every curve I took, and still, I followed. Memories chased me as hard as I chased that signal. Last year, Mom forgot Jacob's medication twice in 1 week. When I confronted her, she brushed it off, said she was tired. Then there were the meals. She used to cook for him, real meals. After the inheritance, cold sandwiches left in the fridge. I remembered something else, too. Something I didn't let myself think about until now. A conversation I overheard, months ago. I'd been in the laundry room, folding towels, when I heard her say it. We carried him long enough. Dad didn't argue. I remembered standing there holding a towel that suddenly felt too heavy to lift. The absence of care, that's what changed. Not one moment, not one act, but the silence where love used to be. My GPS beeped, pulling me back. The signal had stopped. I slowed the car as I neared a turnoff. Gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into a remote picnic area, the kind used by hikers and campers. Empty today, except for one vehicle. Their SUV, parked crooked, close to the tree line. No one in sight. I turned off my engine. For a moment, I just sat there. My chest hurt. My breathing felt wrong. Then I got out. The air smelled sharp up here. Pine needles, dry earth. Somewhere, birds called. I followed the last direction from the GPS, down a narrow dirt path that curved through the trees. My footsteps sounded too loud. Around the bend, the world opened into a clearing, and I saw them. Mom and Dad, standing near the edge of a cliff. Jacob's silver wheelchair sat beside them. Empty. I stopped moving. Dad was holding the handles of the chair, his posture calm, deliberate. Mom leaned in. She said something, but I couldn't hear. Then, without warning, Dad pushed. The wheelchair rolled forward, not fast, not rushed, just steady. I stood frozen. I couldn't scream, couldn't speak. My throat locked. The silver chair reached the edge and tipped. It disappeared. I heard nothing. Then I saw Mom's hand touch Dad's arm. I saw her lean close. "It's done," she whispered, and together they turned. They didn't look back. My body broke before my mind did. I ran. I don't remember my legs moving, but somehow I was running, crashing through the grass, tripping, gasping, my heart thundering. I reached the edge. I looked down. The silver chair lay crumpled on a ledge far below, its metal frame twisted, gleaming in the sunlight. But Jacob, I couldn't see him. My knees gave out. I sank to the dirt. No. It came out as air, not a word. I pressed my shaking hands to the ground. Then I heard it, faint, broken, but real. "Lily," my brother's voice, calling my name. From somewhere below, my hands grabbed at the rocky edge as my body tipped forward, sliding, stumbling, catching whatever I could. My palms scraped against jagged stone. Dirt filled my mouth. My knees buckled, but gravity kept pulling me down. I wasn't climbing. I was falling. Jacob's voice was my only anchor. Somewhere below, faint as wind, I heard him cry out again. "Lily!" The sound ripped through my chest. I forced my body downward. There was no path, no plan. I clung to tree roots, rocks that shifted under my weight. Every inch of my skin burned. My arms shook so violently I thought they'd give out completely, but stopping wasn't an option. I half slid, half crawled over a sharp ridge, cutting open the side of my leg. Blood soaked into my jeans, but I didn't care. I just kept going. Every second mattered. I reached a narrow ledge, and then, suddenly, I saw him. Jacob. He wasn't in the wheelchair. He was wedged between two rocks, twisted awkwardly, barely upright. His face was pale, streaked with dirt and blood. His lips were cracked. His body shook with shallow breaths. His eyes opened when he heard me. "Lily." His voice broke. "They pushed me." My body collapsed beside him. I don't remember how long I stayed there, holding his face, whispering his name like it could somehow undo the nightmare. His skin was cold. His arms dangled uselessly. His legs. I didn't let myself look. I focused on his eyes. The eyes that had once teased me across dinner tables. The brother who used to race me home from school. Now, reduced to this fragile, broken shell. And my parents did this. That thought hit harder than the fall. I wanted to scream, to let the rage take over. But I couldn't. I didn't have time. "I'm getting you out of here," I whispered. I wasn't sure if I was promising him or begging myself. Jacob's body felt weightless and impossibly heavy as I lifted him. And he cried out, and the sound gutted me, but I didn't stop. I shifted him onto my back. His dead weight pressed into me, each breath he took shaking my entire frame. My legs screamed under the pressure. My arms felt splintered, and then I climbed. The ledge that had been a death trap moments ago now stretched upward like a mountain. My shoes slipped against the dirt. My fingernails tore as I clawed upward, Jacob's breaths hot against my neck. I whispered over and over, "Don't let go! Don't let go of me!" I wasn't sure if I was talking to him or myself. At one point, I slipped. My body lurched sideways. Rocks tumbled beneath me. Jacob slid halfway off my back. "No! No, Jacob!" I managed to catch him, pulling him tighter against me. My shoulder burned from the strain. I tasted blood in my mouth. I felt my body reaching its limit. But his heartbeat against my back was the only thing that mattered. I kept going. Every inch I climbed felt like stealing seconds from death. And by the time I reached the top, the sky had shifted. Evening was creeping in, the sun dropping lower behind the trees. The air felt colder. I dropped to my knees at the summit. Jacob slid from my back. I lowered him as gently as I could onto the dirt. His body convulsed once, then stilled. "Jacob?" I shook him. His lips parted, but no sound came. "No. No, no." I yanked my sweatshirt off, wrapping it around him. I pressed my fingers against his neck, counting seconds. His pulse was there, faint, but there. "Stay with me. Please, stay with me." I pressed my forehead against his. I wasn't sure if I was praying or bargaining. Then my mind snapped to the next step. I reached for my phone. Nothing. No bars. No signal. I tried anyway. Dialed 911. It didn't even ring. Panic clawed at me. Then my phone buzzed. The GPS app. I looked at the screen and froze. The tracking signal. The dot I'd been following all morning. It wasn't Jacob. My parents had taken his phone. I'd been chasing the signal from his wheelchair. They knew. They planned this. They wanted me to find that chair, to believe what they wanted me to believe. I felt cold spread through my chest. This wasn't a failed accident, this was a setup. And now, out here, I was completely alone. Except, I wasn't. I forced myself upright. I had no idea if my parents were still nearby, watching, waiting. I didn't care. I wasn't leaving Jacob behind. I lifted him again. This time, I dragged him. The sweatshirt slipped from his body as I pulled him inch by inch toward the tree line, my muscles failing me at every step. My tears blurred my vision. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see them, expecting to hear her voice. That voice I used to trust. Nothing. The woods stayed silent. When I reached the car, I fumbled the keys twice before unlocking the doors. I shoved the back seat flat, pulling Jacob inside as best I could. His body barely fit. Then I slammed the doors shut. I locked them. Only then did I let myself cry. Not from fear, from pure exhaustion. The world spun around me as I started the engine. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. I shifted into drive, and then my phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. "We've reported Jacob missing. Come home. We'll explain." I stared at the screen. My mouth went dry. I didn't reply. I just pressed harder on the gas pedal and kept driving, because I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I didn't slow down, not when the road narrowed, not when my eyes blurred, not even when Jacob shifted in the back seat, making the whole car tilt slightly as I hit a curve too fast. I kept driving. I think part of me believed that if I stopped, I'd wake up, that all of this, the cliff, the wheelchair, the text from my mother, would vanish. But every mile marker I passed was a reminder. This was real. They did this. They tried to erase him. And I'd seen it. When the hospital finally appeared, I nearly skidded into the emergency entrance. My hands could barely grasp the steering wheel by then. I slammed the brakes too hard, the tires screeched, and 2 nurses came running before I even turned the ignition off. "He's in the back," I rasped as I forced the door open, stumbling onto the asphalt. "My brother, please, help him." They didn't ask questions. I remember one nurse saying, "We've got you, ma'am. Just breathe." But I wasn't breathing. I stood there useless, frozen, as they pulled Jacob out of the car. His body sagged, limp and pale, against their arms. His hair stuck to his forehead. Blood crusted down the side of his face. His lips moved once as they lifted him. I didn't hear what he said. Then they disappeared through the sliding glass doors, and I stood outside like a fool, covered in dirt and blood that wasn't mine. At some point, someone pressed a clipboard into my hands. "Ma'am, we need his name, date of birth, Jacob Shaw, emergency contact." I almost laughed. I wrote my name. The rest was a blur. I signed forms without seeing them. My name, my address, my brother's allergies. I recited all of it like a robot. My hands shook so badly the pen kept slipping. I had to press my palm against the counter to steady myself. My clothes smelled like sweat and iron. I realized, distantly, that my jeans were still wet with blood from the gash on my leg. It didn't hurt. Nothing hurt. Not yet. They told me to wait. I sat in the hallway outside the trauma unit. The fluorescent lights made my head pound. The whole place smelled like bleach and fear and silence, except for the clock ticking somewhere behind the nurses' station and the quiet hum of a local radio station playing behind the reception desk. That's when I heard it. "Family says the young man was last seen near Sunset Ridge. I looked up. According to police reports, Jacob Shaw, age 35, was reported missing earlier this afternoon after a family picnic. His parents, Clyde and Mirabelle Shaw, told authorities he may have fallen from his wheelchair during an outing in the national forest. I couldn't breathe. They searched the area but were unable to locate him. Officials continue to investigate. No. I stood up too fast. The hallway spun. They'd already told their story. They'd already called the police. And I was too late. I stumbled into the nearest bathroom, locked the door behind me, and slid down the wall until I hit the cold tile floor. Then I broke. I didn't cry like in the movies. There was no gasping, no wailing. I just shattered. My body folded in on itself, my arms wrapped around my knees, my forehead pressed against the tile. Why didn't I stop them sooner? Why did I let myself believe it wasn't that bad? I remembered all of it now. Every skipped meal, every ignored appointment, every night Jacob told me, "I'm fine," when his voice sounded smaller than it used to. I remembered my mother's smile, tight and forced, and my father's silence, the way they treated Jacob like furniture, like a problem they hadn't solved yet. And I said nothing, because I thought, what? That they'd change? That it was just stress? I wanted to vomit. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, fingers trembling, and hovered over the dial pad. Call the police, tell them, tell someone, but I didn't, because a voice in my head whispered, "Who would believe you?" Clyde and Mirabelle Shaw, respected, wealthy, old money. My father designed half the downtown skyline. My mother ran the church's charity board for 20 years. And me? I was the youngest, the quiet one, the disappointment. I locked the phone screen. Then someone knocked on the bathroom door. "Miss Shaw?" I flinched. "Ma'am?" "Sorry, but, the head nurse asked me to tell you something. It's important." I forced myself up. My legs nearly gave out. When I opened the door, a young nurse stood there. Her expression was careful, too careful. "What is it?" I asked, my voice hollow. She glanced around the hallway before speaking. "Your parents, they've been calling around, asking which hospitals are treating missing persons tonight." I felt ice in my spine. "I thought you should know," she said softly. My body moved before my mind caught up. "Mark him as John Doe," I said, my voice low but steady. "No visitors, no calls forwarded, no information given to anyone." The nurse hesitated. "Please," I added. She nodded. "I'll take care of it." When I returned to Jacob's room, I found him unconscious. Monitors beeped softly. His forehead was bandaged. His arms were scraped raw. His breathing was shallow but steady. I sat beside him. I reached out and touched his hand. "I'm all you have now," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "And you're all I have too." I stayed like that, counting each rise and fall of his chest until I lost track of time. Then, just as I closed my eyes, I heard it. "Lily." His voice. Weak, slurred, but real. I looked up. "Jacob?" But his eyes stayed shut. Then my phone vibrated. A text. From Mother. "Are you safe? Come home. We'll explain everything." I didn't reply. But I knew. They weren't finished. And neither was I. Morning came slowly, as if the sky itself hesitated to turn gray. I hadn't slept. I sat beside Jacob's bed, watching every rise and fall of his chest, counting them like prayers I no longer believed in. His skin was still pale, bruises blooming under his eyes, lips cracked from dehydration. Then his eyelids fluttered. "Jacob?" My voice cracked. His eyes opened, heavy and unfocused. For a moment I thought he didn't recognize me. Then, barely louder than breath, I heard him. "They did it. Mom, Dad." I swallowed. I held his hand tighter, pressing it against my cheek. "You're safe now, I promise. They'll never touch you again." But in my own mind, the words rang hollow. I didn't know how to protect him. Not really. I didn't know where to go, who to trust. All I had was a promise and fear gnawing at my spine. I stayed there until he drifted back to sleep. When I stepped outside his room, the hallway felt colder than it should. I leaned against the wall, pressing the back of my head against the painted concrete, staring at the ceiling tiles as if they held answers. How do you report your own parents? Who would believe me? I wasn't the strong one. I wasn't the loud one. I was the quiet girl, the youngest, the one who never spoke unless spoken to. That was my role. Always had been. Now every instinct screamed at me to call the police, to run to the nurses. But I couldn't make myself move. And then the nurse found me. "Ms. Shaw?" She looked hesitant, like someone approaching a stray dog. "What is it?" My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "Your parents called again. Asked if any hospitals had admitted a missing man last night." I nodded once, numb. "Oh, and this was dropped off at the front desk." She held up a small basket, cheap cellophane wrapped around it, a plastic note taped on top. "For Jacob." I stared at it. I don't remember taking it from her. I don't remember walking down the hallway, but suddenly I was in the break room, the door locked behind me, the basket sitting on the table like something radioactive, cookies, bottled water, a note. I didn't open the note. Instead, I picked up the bottle. It looked ordinary, but something inside me, the part of me that had trusted for too long, finally refused. I carried it straight to the head nurse. "Test this," I said. "Please, just test it." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but something in my face must have scared her. She nodded. I waited in the chapel. Time bled around me. I sat in the last pew, head bowed, breathing shallow, afraid to think. Stained glass colored the walls in blue and red and gold, like judgment. What if it was nothing? What if I'd truly gone insane? But deep down I knew. I knew the moment the nurse came back, her face pale. "It was laced," she whispered. "The water, enough sedative to stop his breathing." I thanked her. Then I walked outside. I sat on the curb in the hospital's parking lot, hands shaking, air burning my throat. How long had I believed Mom loved Jacob more? How long had I convinced myself that was why she ignored me? That Jacob was the golden child? Now I saw it for what it was. Neither of us mattered. We were tools, Jacob for the money, me for silence. Did I help them? I asked myself, by saying nothing all those years. Did I help them? I don't remember how long I sat there. It might have been minutes, might have been hours. But something shifted. A thought, small at first. Grandpa. And then it hit me. The cameras. Years ago, after a break-in, Grandpa had insisted on installing a full security system around the house. My mother called it paranoid. My father called it embarrassing. But Grandpa didn't care. I stood up so fast the world spun. If the system was still running, I didn't waste another second. I told the nurses Jacob needed to remain under protection, marked as a John Doe, no visitors under any circumstance. Then I left. The drive to the house felt like falling back into a nightmare. Every turn brought me closer to the place I thought was home. Now, nothing but walls, painted with lies. I parked behind the garage. The house was silent. My parents, I assumed, were at the police station, reinforcing their story. I slipped inside through the back door. The kitchen looked the same. Everything looked the same. Except now, I saw the rot. I made my way upstairs, heart racing, to the small office Grandpa used before he passed. Dust coated the shelves, but the cabinet in the corner that I remembered. I unlocked it with the key he'd once hidden behind the baseboard. The backup drive sat exactly where he'd left it. My hands trembled as I plugged it into the old monitor. I clicked through days of footage, empty hallways, silent rooms, until, finally, I found them. 2 days before the picnic, the dining room. I saw my mother, standing with her back straight, hands clasped, voice as cold as steel. "Once the money's ours, we can finally breathe," she said. "Jacob was never meant to keep it." My father nodded. Silent. Agreement. Not shock. Not hesitation. Just agreement. I watched until the footage ended. I sat there, staring at the blank screen, the silence crushing. They hadn't lost control. They hadn't panicked. They'd planned it. I wasn't blind. I just refused to see. A sound outside snapped me back. Gravel crunching. Headlights. I looked through the window and saw their car pulling into the driveway. I ran, but this time, not from fear, from certainty. By the time I reached the hospital, night had fallen. I kept to the shadows near the side entrance, my heart hammering not from panic, but calculation. Every second felt stolen, every step deliberate. Jacob was still there. Safe. His room was quiet except for the hum of machines. Seeing him, I felt my pulse settle, just slightly. I signed the paperwork, marked him as a vulnerable adult under state protection. Every box, every signature, tightening a legal barrier between him and the people who called themselves our parents. I sat beside him afterward, watching his chest rise and fall. "They won't reach you. Not now." I whispered it aloud, more to myself than to him. But in the pit of my stomach, I wasn't sure. I stayed there until his breathing evened into sleep. Then I stepped out to the visitors' lounge, needing space to think. That's when I saw it. The local news was playing quietly on the wall-mounted TV. At first, I didn't pay attention. It was just background noise, until I heard her voice. I turned. There she was, my mother, standing at a podium outside the police station, her hair perfect, her makeup subtle, just enough to enhance the tears streaking down her cheeks. "We just want our son back," she sobbed. I felt sick. My father stood behind her, his face blank. Not grief, not worry, just nothing. Reporters asked questions. Neighbors stood with candles, shaking their heads at the tragedy. "They said they searched for hours," the anchor said. "Jacob Shaw remains missing." I looked around the waiting room. No one met my eyes. Everyone believed them. Why wouldn't they? I was just the youngest daughter, the quiet one. I walked back to Jacob's room like I was underwater. Once inside, I sat down, pulled out my phone, and for the first time, recorded. I leaned close to Jacob's sleeping face and whispered, "Jacob, who hurt you?" His lips moved. They pushed me. I stopped recording, saved the file, stored it in a hidden folder. A private file. Proof. I didn't know what I was building yet, but I was building something. I sat there for a long time, thinking. Then, an idea. Barely a whisper in my mind, but it was there. I remembered Grandpa's old attorney, a man who used to send long, rambling Christmas cards even after Grandpa passed. I found his name buried in the house deed documents. I drafted a message, short, cold. I attached the surveillance footage I'd retrieved and typed just 4 words, "For Jacob, please help." Then I hit send. I sat frozen for what felt like hours, until my phone buzzed. "I believe you." Tears pricked my eyes, not from relief, from exhaustion. But it wasn't over. Acting on his advice, I arranged Jacob's transfer to a secure care facility he controlled legally, a place hidden behind corporate names and privacy clauses. And me? I disappeared. I booked a roadside motel under a fake name, paid in cash, just like he told me. Inside the small room, I stood by the door for nearly 5 minutes, listening to the silence. Then I locked every bolt, wedged a chair under the handle, drew the curtains. Finally, I let myself sit. I stared at my phone. I watched them. My mother's press conferences, my father's silence behind her, social media updates, the endless stream of sympathy pouring toward them. They were perfect, the grieving parents, the pillars of the community. And me. I became invisible in order to protect the only person who ever saw me. The days blurred. From the motel, I tracked their moves, every lie, every tear. At night, I barely slept. Every sound outside the door set my pulse racing. But every morning, there was one thing that kept me breathing. A photo. Jacob, in physical therapy, his faint smile, crooked and weak, but there, he was alive. And I would keep him that way. Until, one night, a knock shattered the silence. I froze. I didn't move, barely breathed. Then, soft, muffled. "Lily, we know you're inside." My mother's voice. I sat frozen. I didn't open the door. But my next move had to be bigger. Much bigger. By dawn, something inside me had changed. It wasn't panic anymore. It wasn't the need for answers or even an apology. That need had died somewhere on that cliff. Now I didn't care if they called themselves my parents. To me, they were just a threat. I whispered it aloud, sitting on the edge of that motel bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper. I'm not their daughter anymore. I'm their problem. It was Monday morning when I walked into Harper's office. He looked older than I remembered from childhood Christmas dinners, less like the family friend he used to be, more like a man who'd seen too many things and trusted too few. But when he stood up, his handshake wasn't pity. It was something harder. "We don't have much time." I laid it all out. The GPS data from Jacob's wheelchair, the audio clip from the house, the lab report confirming the poisoned water bottle. And finally, my phone. The whispered words I'd recorded beside Jacob's hospital bed. They pushed me. Harper didn't speak for a while after listening. Then, quietly, he said, "We have enough." This can open an attempted murder case. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt cold. Because then he said, "But you need to know, they're moving fast." What? Your parents. They've filed motions to claim control of Jacob's trust, declared him missing, presumed dead. My stomach turned. They didn't just try to kill him. They're already spending his money. Harper's expression didn't change. If we move today, we can block it, but you'll need to sign. I hesitated. Not because I doubted, not because I cared, but because all my life, signing anything had meant agreeing with my family, supporting the image, the name. And now, I picked up the pen. This was the first time I ever signed something against my family. When we were done, Harper filed the injunction. Criminal proceedings began. He looked at me as he gathered the papers. You understand they'll know. They'll know you're fighting. I want them to. The rest of the day blurred. I returned to the motel alone. It was supposed to feel like progress, like the first real step. Instead, I watched it happen. News broke that evening. Social media lit up. The Shaw daughter, Lily Shaw, is opposing her grieving parents' search for their missing son. Community groups shared photos of mom crying, dad silent behind her. People I hadn't seen in years posted long, pitying captions about how money corrupts. A few called me brainwashed. Others called me worse. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was hated. Somewhere around midnight, I sat at the edge of the motel bed, reading every comment, every post, every tag. And for a moment, I broke. I almost deleted everything. My accounts, my evidence, myself. Because part of me, the obedient daughter, the quiet one, the one who never raised her voice, still believed them, still thought maybe I was wrong, maybe I was making it worse. Then I glanced down, at my phone's lock screen, a photo from years ago, Jacob grinning, pushing me on a swing. I was 6. He was 9. Mom had taken the picture. I sat there staring at it for a long time. He never stopped seeing me, so now I'd fight for him. I stood up, plugged in my phone, wiped my face, and when Harper's message came through minutes later, I didn't hesitate. Get ready, Lily. Court hearing. Tomorrow. I wasn't ready, but I'd be there, no matter what. I wheeled Jacob through the courthouse doors myself. The building wasn't grand, just a small county courthouse, the kind you pass without noticing. But inside, it felt like everyone I'd ever known had shown up to watch us fall. Old neighbors, teachers, people from church, all seated, all staring. Our parents were already there. My mother sat near their attorney, dressed in a pale blue suit, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her face was blank, but her eyes glistened like someone mid-tragedy. My father was beside her, stiff, silent, looking straight ahead as if none of us existed. Neither of them looked at Jacob. Neither of them looked at me. I parked Jacob's wheelchair near the front, beside Harper's table. His hand brushed mine. He was awake, barely, and terrified. I whispered, "You're safe." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. The judge entered. We all stood. My knees trembled. Their attorney went first. He painted them as grieving parents. He described Jacob as tragically missing, possibly deceased. He argued that the $5.6 million trust set up by our grandfather should be released immediately to the next of kin. My mother bowed her head as if in prayer. They act like he's dead, I thought, like I don't exist. Then Harper stood. No drama, no raised voice. He simply laid it out. First, the GPS data, showing Jacob's route from the house to the cliff. Then, the audio recording, their own voices, clear as day, planning it. Then, the toxicology report, the sedative in the water bottle. And finally, my phone. He played Jacob's whispered words to the entire courtroom. They pushed me. Silence. For the first time, my mother's hands shook. My father wiped sweat from his forehead, but I felt nothing. As the recordings played, flashes of my childhood came unbidden. My mother, years ago, calling Jacob the miracle child. Her voice scolding me to stay quiet, Lily, make life easier. I remembered standing in the shadows at every birthday party, every family event, every milestone that belonged to him. I'd been invisible for so long, I'd forgotten how it felt to be seen. And now they were the ones who couldn't hide. Harper rested his case. Then, after a long pause, Harper asked for one more thing. Jacob's testimony. I turned toward him, not sure he could even speak. His injuries, his trauma. But he surprised me. I want to, he whispered. The judge allowed it. Jacob's voice was thin, fragile, but firm. He told them what happened, how he'd been wheeled to the cliff, how our father's hands pushed the chair, how our mother said, "It's done." No tears, no dramatics, just the truth. And when he finished, I watched the courtroom. Not one person doubted him. Our mother did. She broke. She sobbed, standing up, begging the judge to listen. Lily manipulated him. She's always been jealous. She hates this family. She poisoned him against us. Her voice cracked. Our father didn't cry. He just stood and, in the coldest tone I'd ever heard, accused me of forging everything. My body didn't react. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I didn't even look at them. Instead, I reached for Jacob's hand and held it. I didn't need them to believe me, I thought. I needed them to hear us. The judge spoke. Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, guilty. I watched as officers cuffed my parents. My mother sobbed harder. My father glared at the floor. Neither of them looked at us. As they were led away, I leaned down to Jacob. "It's over," I whispered. He closed his eyes. Outside the courthouse, the cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions I didn't answer. I stood there in the cold sunlight, holding Jacob's wheelchair steady, and watched 2 police vans drive away. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel anything. Just empty. I thought that was the end. But healing doesn't begin in court. It begins in silence. 2 weeks passed. In that time, I didn't visit the courthouse again. I didn't need to hear the final sentence read aloud. I already knew. Nothing they said could give me back what I'd lost. Jacob stayed at the hospital. His recovery was slow, exhausting. The doctors said his body was healing better than expected, but trauma left different kinds of scars. He spoke little, he slept often, but every morning, when I walked into that recovery room, he opened his eyes, and that was enough. Around town, people didn't say much. Some neighbors crossed the street when they saw me. Others watched me in silence from behind grocery store windows, as if unsure whether to speak or pretend we'd never met. No apologies came. No questions either. I didn't blame them. What do you say to the woman who exposed her own parents? The official letters came in the mail, delivered to the hospital reception desk under my name. Sentencing results, final reports, the cold weight of legal closure. I didn't open them. I knew what they said. I'd read enough of that language to last me a lifetime. I used to believe that winning meant freedom. But standing in the ruins of what was once my family, all I felt was the emptiness of an answer I didn't want. In the end, there was no apology, no closure, just silence. Jacob, though, he changed that. Every day he fought. Slow, painful steps in therapy sessions. A few seconds standing, one trembling smile after hours of exhaustion. That smile saved me. I realized then I hadn't saved him. He chose to keep fighting. We moved after that. Seattle felt far enough. I used part of the trust fund, secured under Jacob's name now, locked behind every legal safeguard Harper could manage, to start over. I found a small apartment near the coast. Nothing big, just quiet. Jacob was transferred to a recovery center nearby. Physical therapy, counseling, medical care, everything he needed. As for me, I found a part-time job at a little bookstore near the waterfront. Something simple, peaceful. I told myself I chose it because it was easy. But the truth was, I needed a place where nobody whispered my name. One afternoon, unpacking boxes in our new apartment, I found it. The photo, me and Jacob. I was maybe 5. He couldn't have been more than 8. He was pushing me on the old swing set in Grandpa's yard, both of us laughing. Both of us still innocent enough to believe in forever. I sat down on the floor and stared at it for a long time. For years, that photo hurt. It reminded me of being the overlooked child, the invisible one, the spare. But now, looking at Jacob's smile in that old picture, I saw something else. Proof. We survived. I framed it. It sits on the little shelf in our new living room now. I used to think silence meant defeat, but now I know. Sometimes silence is choosing peace. 2 weeks after the move, I took Jacob to the park. There's a small one near the apartment. Nothing fancy. Just a few benches and a quiet view of the ocean. He didn't say much as I wheeled him along the gravel path. Neither did I. We stopped by the railing, where the cliffs weren't dangerous, just high enough to watch the waves below. For a long while, we just listened. The wind, the sea, the silence between us. Then Jacob spoke. "Do you miss them?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about the question. Finally, I said, "I miss who I thought they were." A long pause. But not who they became. I smiled, small, tired, but real. He nodded. We sat there for a long time after that. No more questions, no more explanations, just his hand in mine. I glanced down. His fingers tightened around mine, just slightly, and for the first time in months, I let myself breathe.